week 2 of the fantasy baseball season. And here's a few hitters I look to add this week heading into week 2. So right here, so far we've seen some surprising guys to start off the season. And hopefully these pickups can help owners over the next few weeks. And hopefully to the later part of the season as well. The first guy, Jesus Sanchez of the Miami Marlins. So far Sanchez off to a good start for this Marlin team. 2 home runs, 6 RBIs. 5 runs scored at 310 average and a 333 on base in 29 at-bats. So right here, he's batting second and third for this Miami Marlin team. And if you need some home run power and RBIs, I think he's a decent add this week here. And he's available, is Sanchez, in 59% of fantasy leagues. So the last few games for him, April 11th at the Angels, 2 for 4, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs. April 12th at the Angels, 0 for 4. April 14th versus Philly, 2 for 4, run and a rib. April 15th versus Philly, 2 for 5, 2 runs, 2 RBIs. And April 17th versus Philly, 3 for 6 with a run and 2 RBIs. So right here, he's hitting the baseball well. He's driving in runs. He's in the mix of things, obviously, there in the Miami Marlin offense. And this team, they've improved a little from last season to this season, especially in the lineup. And Sanchez is definitely one of those improvements. I definitely would give him an ad this week. The second hitter I would give an ad this week, too, is Owen Miller of the Cleveland Guardians. So Miller's off to a hot start here, and he's definitely been added in tons of fantasy leagues in the first week and a half of the season, and right now ranked third in Roto leagues on the season. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 9 runs scored, and an awesome 560 batting average, and a 586 on base with 9 runs scored in 25 at-bats. So obviously these numbers aren't going to stick. It's only a 25 at-bat sample size, but Miller, obviously, he's a guy to go out there and get. Right now, he's available in 47% of fantasy leagues, and he's definitely been a hit machine for this Guardian team that's most likely going to have a horrible season here. So the last few games for Miller, April 13th at Cincinnati, 3 for 5, 2 home runs, 2 RBIs. April 15th versus the Giants, 1 for 2 with a rib. April 16th versus the Giants, 2 for 2 with a run. And April 17th versus San Francisco, 0 for 3. So right now, while he's riding this hot streak and he qualifies at first and second base, you got to go out there and get him. And when he cools off, obviously, you most likely would drop him. And I know it's early in the season, but even if you could get a guy right now and he'll help you at least for a few weeks, you definitely go out there and do it. And right now, Owen Miller is white hot, and I would give him an ad, even though obviously these numbers aren't going to be sustainable. The next hitter is Jonathan VR of the Chicago Cubs. So VR, he's been a pretty decent pro over the last few seasons, even though it seems like he's on a new team every season, bouncing around the league the last few seasons with Baltimore, Milwaukee Brewers, New York Mets, and now the Cubs this season. So on the season here for VR, 9 for 19 on the season, no home runs, 4 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 474 batting average, and a 500 on base percentage. So right here, we know VR is a very versatile utility man, and he qualifies second, third, and shortstop here. So the last few games here for VR, April 13th at Pittsburgh, 1 for 4. April 14th at the Rockies, 2 for 4 with an RBI. April 15th at the Rockies, 2 for 3, 2 runs and an RBI. And April 16th at the Rockies, 4 for 5 with RBI. So right here, he's getting a lot of contact. He's getting on base. But the only thing with him is, I don't know if he's going to be playing every day for the Chicago Cub team, even though I really think he should be as VR. He's very versatile, like I mentioned, in the infield. This guy is a perfect leadoff hitter, a number 2 hitter for your lineup. And he's a guy we've seen over the last few seasons will pop as well. So right now, while he's available in 55% of fantasy leagues and has the great versatility, like I mentioned, I definitely would go out there and get him. And obviously, if he's not going to play every day or he's going to start struggling, then you go out there and drop him. But right now, he's a perfect guy to go out there and get this week. The next hitter is Taylor Ward of the Los Angeles Angels. So we saw Ward have some flashes last season and play some decent baseball. So Ward on the season, 2 for 3 with a homer and RBI and a stolen base. But he just got back into the lineup yesterday after coming off the injured list here, is Ward. So the first couple games he's been in this season, April 16th at Texas, 2 for 3 with a homer. And April 17th at Texas, 1 for 3 with a run. So like I mentioned, Ward last season showed some flashes towards the end of the season for this Angel team. And now with Mike Trout banged up as well here, they might have to move a few guys around in that outfield if Trout's going to be out on an injured list, even though he's day-to-day with the bruised hand. But Taylor Ward definitely can hit the baseball. He definitely has some pop, where last season he did eight home runs in 208 at-bats. And right now, he's available in 97% of fantasy leagues, but he's going to get an everyday opportunity, I believe, with this Angel team. And if you need some pop and a decent hitter, I would go out there and get Ward this week for sure. The next hitter is Connor Joe of the Colorado Rockies. So, Joe, he's been a hot pickup over the first week and a half of the season here for fantasy owners. And right now, he's only available, Joe, in 37% of fantasy leagues. So far in the young season, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, a stolen base, 8 runs scored, 11 for 32 at the plate, 344 average, and a 447 on base percentage. And last season, in a small sample size, in 180 at bats, Joe, he was good, 8 home runs, 35 RBIs with a 285 average. So the last few games here for him, he's an everyday ball player and leads off for this Rocky team. That obviously it's probably going to be a tough season for them as well, even though they got off to a decent start in the first few games of the year. So April 12th at Texas, 1 for 3 with a run. April 14th versus Chicago, 2 for 5. April 15th versus Chicago, 1 for 4. April 16th versus Chicago, 2 for 4 with a run and a rib. And April 17th versus Chicago, 2 for 3. So right now, he's a hit machine, is Connor Joe. And he also qualifies at first and outfield. It's a good versatility, pretty good bat. And a guy who's going to give you major league at-bats and put the ball in play and be decent for fantasy owners. And obviously start every day. The next hitter I looked at is Ji-Man Cho of the Tampa Bay Rays. So Cho, we've seen flashes of him on and off over the last few seasons. Last season was a down year, but so far this year, he's changed his approach and he's looked real good. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs. 5 runs scored, a 526 average, and a 654 on base percentage in 21 at-bats here for Ji-Man Cho. So Cho, he's a guy that's not going to start every day, but also a guy that's decent for utility spot, and he's versatile as well a little bit with first and outfield qualifications in some fantasy leagues. So the last few games here for Cho, April 13th versus Oakland, 1 for 3 with a homer. April 15th at Chicago, 1 for 3 with a run and a rib. April 16th, he sat that one out. And April 17th at the White Sox, 0 for 3 with a run. So right now, this Tampa Bay Ray team, they need some pop in the middle of the order. They traded Austin Meadows away before the season to the Detroit Tigers. And I think Cho could be that 20, 25 home run type of guy. And right now, I know it's early in the season, but he's ranked 7th in fantasy baseball. And he's available in 82% of fantasy leagues. The next batter I looked at this week's Jurickson Profar of the San Diego Padres. So Profar, one of the top prospects about a decade ago, but he just never panned out to those levels. But he's been a serviceable utility guy over the last few seasons. But so far this year, he's showing some pop. 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, 3 runs scored, a 269 average, and a 394 on base percentage. So last season, Profar only hit 4 home runs, but this season here, already in the 26 at-bats, he's got the 3 homers, is Profar, and it's good to see, and he qualifies at first, second, and outfield, and he's available in 63% of fantasy leagues. So over the last few games here for Profar, April 13th at San Francisco, 1 for 3. April 14th versus Arizona. April 14th versus the Braves, 0 for 2 with a rib. April 15th versus Atlanta, 0 for 4. April 16th versus Atlanta, 1 for 3 with a homer. So right here, he's hitting the baseball well. It seems like he's playing just about every day here for this Padre team, especially with Tatis out as well. They've shuffled the guys at shortstop and had Profar play different positions, obviously. So right now, he's hitting the baseball well. He's showing power we haven't seen from him, obviously. And I would ride the hot hand with Profar until he cools off, and he's definitely a good pickup this week. The next hitter is J.P. Crawford of the Seattle Mariners. Crawford, he got a nice extension a couple weeks ago here, and so far he's played pretty decent baseball here. I know he hasn't driven in many runs or showed power, but this guy definitely can hit the baseball well. On the season so far, 11 for 29, no home runs, 1 RBI, a stolen base, 379 batting average, a 500 on base, and 5 runs scored here for J.P. Crawford. So I know shortstop isn't the greatest of positions in fantasy baseball, but if you need some batting average, right now Crawford's definitely given that to the Mariners and fantasy owners who are going to go out there and get him. And right now, he's still available, is Crawford, in a whopping 84% of fantasy leagues. And obviously, the Mariners believe in him, giving him a decent extension coming into the season. The last few games here, April 13th at the White Sox, 3 for 4 with a run and a rib. April 14th at the White Sox, 2 for 5 with a stolen base. April 15th versus Houston, 1 for 3 with 2 runs. April 16th versus Houston, 0 for 2. And April 17th versus Houston, 1 for 3. So right here, hitting the baseball well. Not going to show much power, but on base percentage, hits, and obviously stolen bases, he's going to be a decent guy in those categories. So if you need a shortstop in those categories early in the season, I think Crawford's worth a shot this week and pick up on the wire. The next hitter I look to add this week is Arraez of the Minnesota Twins. So the Twins, their offense has been surprisingly pretty decent so far. And I know Carlos Correa was a big add in the offseason for them here. So on the season for Luis Arraez, the utility man, 1 home run, 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored, 8 for 23, 348 batting average, and a 400 on base percentage. So right now he qualifies at second, third, and outfield. And he's available in 80% of fantasy leagues, which obviously is a big number here. So the last few games here for Arraez: April 11th versus Seattle, 3 for 4, run and RBI. April 12th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 3. April 13th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 4. April 15th at Boston, 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs. April 16th at Boston, 1 for 3. And April 17th at Boston, 0 for 4. So right now he's getting an everyday opportunity. Like I said, he qualifies in multiple positions. And if you need the versatility in hitting, he's definitely a decent pickup this week here, Arraez. And as long as he's playing every day and contributing, I think in deeper leagues, 12-team leagues or deeper, he's a good add this week and a guy to definitely get on the waiver wire. And the 10th and final hitter I looked at this week, Sean Murphy of the Oakland Athletics. So Murphy, a couple seasons ago, had a pretty good year with the A's. And we know in the offseason, Oakland traded all their big boppers and big players off the roster. So Sean Murphy, he's been their best hitter so far, it seems like. On the season, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 6 runs scored at .250 average, and a .308 on base percentage. So right now, Murphy's widely available in 67% of fantasy leagues here. The last few games for him: April 13th at Tampa, 2 for 3, a homer, 3 RBIs. April 14th at Tampa, 2 for 4 with a rib. April 15th at Toronto, 1 for 4. April 16th at Toronto, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. And April 17th at Toronto, 1 for 3 with an RBI. So right here, catcher's not a great position, obviously, in fantasy baseball. And I think Sean Murphy could do good things. Like I mentioned a few seasons ago, he showed some pop and had a decent batting average. And so far this season, he's been serviceable and he's off to a good start. And he's definitely a catcher I would give an add this week. So that's a few hitters I'd look to add here for week 2 of the fantasy baseball season.